Hostile authoritarian UK downgraded in the Civic Freedoms Index, which, as to the surprise of absolutely no one. Civicus Monitor cites hostility towards campaigners and charities and clampdown on public protest because the British government is currently in the process of making protest illegal. It will be illegal to protest. The police will just come in and shut you down because you're now breaking the law by protesting. You're now breaking the law for inane reasons like your protest is noisy. Yeah, it's a protest. The UK has been downgraded in an annual global index of civic freedoms as a result of the government's increasingly authoritarian drive to impose restrictive and punitive laws on public protests. The Civicus Monitor, which tracks the democratic and civic health of 197 countries across the world, said the UK government was creating a hostile environment towards campaigners, charities and other civil society bodies. The UK's willingness to clamp down on civic freedoms, such as the right to peaceful assembly, means it is now classified as obstructed, putting it alongside countries such as Poland, South Africa and Hungary. The downgrade reflects the worrying trends we are seeing in restrictions across civil society that are threatening our democracy. The government should be setting a positive example to countries that have clamped down on civic space, said Stephanie Draper, the chief executive of the Bond charity, a partner in the Civicus collaboration. She added, the UK is becoming increasingly authoritarian and is among concerning company in the Civicus Monitor ratings as restrictive laws and dangerous rhetoric are creating a hostile environment towards civil society in the UK. Because, when it comes to things like freedom of speech in the UK, we don't have it. We don't have the right to freedom of speech, and now they're coming after the right to protest as well. They'll just be able to shut your protest down, no matter what it is. Although I do get the feeling that some protests are going to be allowed. She added, the UK is becoming increasingly authoritative. I just read that. Civicus is a collaboration between more than 20 civil society organisations around the world, providing an annual update of the global relative health of civil society. Oh, God. That must be quite a doomer job recently. Countries are classified as open, narrowed, obstructed, repressed or closed. The UK has been downgraded from narrowed to obstructed. Its latest annual report cites a number of restrictive laws introduced and proposed, such as the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act, which gives the police unprecedented power to restrict protests and marches, and the Public Order Bill now going through Parliament, which is aimed at curbing so-called guerrilla-style protests. But it is also concerned by what it sees the UK government's attempt to undermine human rights and its hostility towards charities and campaigners who actively oppose or speak out against its policies on climate change, anti-racism, and refugee and asylum seeker rights. I mean, goddamn, if only there was a group of people out there that was warning all of you guys that that's exactly what would happen if you keep pushing the speech laws. I mean, Jesus Christ, like, you see all the, but it's against racism and Nazis and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so was all the other countries that ended up turning into totalitarian nightmares. China's first speech laws were about racism, by the way. And then they evolved and grew. And now look at China. You can't say anything about the government without getting your fucking door kicked in. You're not allowed to talk about Tiananmen Square without getting your door kicked in and getting disappeared. And we were all warning you. We were all saying, like, if you support these free speech laws now, eventually they'll be used on you. And then they were like, yeah, but the big bad Nazis. And now look at it. Now they're taking away our right to protest. If only you were warned. The UK government's increasingly hardline approach is reflected in a separate annual survey of charities by the Sheila McKechnie Foundation, which reveals widespread alarm at the extent of ministers' perceived hostility to civil society and enthusiasm for cracking down on long-held freedoms to organise and protest. The results of our survey, alongside the new Civicus has downgraded the UK as obstructed, should be a wake-up call. Our civic space is experiencing death by 1,000 cuts, and at a time when global Britain is trying to carve out its new space in the world, we find ourselves in the same class as countries we have previously been a democratic example to, said the SMK chief executive Sue Tibbles. Yeah, it's like the amount of times where it's like, it comes out like, the UK condemns Russia for arresting people speaking out against the... You joking? You joking? Fucking hell, man. Misgender a trans person, you're looking at a criminal record. It's like, shut the fuck up. It's like, you know, the Spider-Man meme? It's like that. The results of our survey alongside... Oh, I've just read that. The SNK's annual campaigner survey found 94% of campaigners says there were threats to the freedom to organise, contribute to public debate, yeah, definitely that one. Influence political decisions or protest. The same proportion agreed that negative rhetoric from politicians towards campaigners was threatening civic space. One respondent said, the government's crackdown on campaigning is deeply alarming and part of a wider drive to silence civil society and restore charities to this backwards idea of just being a service provider for a withdrawing state without any actual campaigning response being allowed. Increasing hostility towards charities and campaigns by politicians and parts of the media had a chilling effect on some of the activities, they said. Chilling effect basically means you're too afraid to do something. Like, the chilling effect is something that's used commonly in British media. I don't know if it's used outside of there. A chilling effect is basically where you become too afraid to, like, speak out. The chilling effect, you know, you go cold, where you want to speak out, you want to do X, Y, Z, you want to protest about this, but you're now too afraid because you'll end up getting arrested for it. Some respondents says they had sometimes censored themselves for fear of backlash. I think we can all relate to that one. We can't always openly declare the truth of a situation due to funding constraints and for fear of damaging public and political relationships, one said. Can relate. Despite this, the majority, 62% of charities, said high-profile media attacks on organisations like the National Trust and RSPB made them more likely to speak out. Just 11% said they were cowed by the threat of being picked on by the media or politicians. There was also a perception among some charities that the public were increasingly open to their campaigning message. As one respondent put it, the public seems slightly more ready to listen and engage in campaigns due to a general sense of things being unjust. A government spokesperson said, this government is committed to protecting freedom of expression and protest, which is a fundamental principle in our democracy. Then why have you made both illegal? Why did you make both illegal then? The government is committed to protecting freedom of expression and protest, which is why we have passed laws to ban those things. Like, it's amazing. I will never ever get over like a politician's ability to just blatantly lie. To just lie so much. They could literally be punching someone in the face directly in front of you and like deny it. What are you talking about? No, I'm not. I'm not punching this. Shut up. I'm not punching this guy in the face. Like, it's like, I will never get over, like, the ability to just blatantly lie like that. I don't understand it. I mean, if you caught me punching somebody in the face, I would turn around and go, yeah, okay, I was doing it. I got caught. You know, you've got eyes. You saw me. Yeah, okay, I got caught. Put the cuffs on. Like, I would do that. You know, there comes a point where you just turn around and go, yeah, fuck it, I've been caught. But not politicians. They will just still lie. They'll just still lie and keep it going, even when you catch them in the act. However, the right to protest, yes, we will protect freedom of expression and protest, but, except it's in this case, however, the right to protest must be balanced with preserving the abilities of the law-abiding majority to go about their daily business. We must ensure there is a proper balance between the rights of individuals, our vital national security, in the name of national security. Jesus, it's 2001 all over again. Essential services and effective government. So yeah, comes as absolutely no surprise that this is the path we're going down. This is the, you know, everybody talks about democracy being free. Oh yes, brilliant. Democratic republicanism. Things have been, you know, democratic republicanism has been pretty much an experiment. Oh, but the Greeks did it, yeah, but it was never done to a massive extent. Democratic republicanism, well, it started as democratic republicanism. It's just liberal democracy now. It's been a relatively new experiment after 1918. You know, World War I was kind of the end for aristocracies and monarchies everywhere. You know, it was the beginning of the end. I realise that I know some people disagree. I realise that some people say, no, it started with the French Revolution, which, yes, it did, but the First World War was where it really, like, look how many monarchies survived after World War I. There's only a few, a small handful. They're still there, but they don't actually exert state power. And basically, so in the long run, liberal democracy is still a relatively new experiment. Still relatively new. And one thing that we are starting to see is eventually democracy will vote itself into authoritarianism, because that's one of the things about democracy is whenever someone gets elected into it, they're only there for 4 years, they're not really a leader, they are a custodian. And during those 4 years, whenever you're building up hatred and more hatred towards that person, the focal point gets removed and they get voted out. The hate gets the reset button pressed, which means the chance of revolution or an uprising is a lot less, because every 4 years you get to press the reset button on it, which is a little trick that they use to keep the democracy lasting longer. But I mean, go out right now and find a single person who's happy with the government. Find me a single person. Because that's the way it works. When you have a shit ton of people over a large geographic area, you're not going to please all of them, right? And the bigger a country gets, the harder and harder it is for that to do. Especially when the country is not homogenous anymore. I guess even worse when it's not homogenous. So eventually, because of that, because of all these different groups and all their conflicting interests that are going to continually use democracy as the club to bash their opponents with and for their own gains, eventually, over enough time, democracy will vote itself into authoritarianism, which is why I feel that large states should be fractured down. But anyway, enough Hoppianism. I've recorded an awful lot of videos today. I'm trying to get through them as much as I possibly can, because I've got someone babysitting my wife. So yeah, moving on.